Welcome to Thank You for Your Reply, where we dive deep into the strategies and insights of real estate's most innovative professionals. I'm your host, Rich Peterson, the founder of the Reply AI. Each episode, we explore the real practices driving success in today's market. No fluff, no pitches, just real conversations with real experts sharing real results. In this episode, I speak with Brian Green of Green Springs Capital Group in New York State. Brian gives us insight into how Green Springs approaches its residential developments and some advice on how to be successful as a developer. Before we dive in, please make sure you like and subscribe. Your engagement helps keep this show running. Without further ado, here we go. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Thank You for Your Reply. Today, I'm joined by Brian Green, who's the general partner of Green Springs Capital Group up in Saratoga Springs, New York. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me. Happy to have a conversation with you today.
Yeah. Thank you as well. Could you start off by telling a little bit about what Green Springs gets up to?
Sure, absolutely. At its heart, we're a development company. So we specialize in small and medium-sized multifamily properties in our home market here, in and around the capital district of New York, which is Albany, and then Saratoga is kind of like 45 minutes north of that territory. But we're basically in this entire MSA. It's the Albany MSA. So we specialize in everything from what we started, which is like 3 and 4 unit buildings, 10 years ago, all the way up till today, where we're doing retrofits of old warehouses, and we're doing ground up developments in more of that, like, call it 30 to 60 unit space. So we've kind of graduated step by step. We went through the progressions, starting with the small stuff and going up to like 10 and then 15. So we've regained our comfort level every step of the way, for lack of a better term. So development is what I spend most of my time on, sourcing new deals, raising investor capital. We also own a property management company that manages all of our own rentals, both short-term and long-term, because Saratoga is kind of a touristy town as well. And then recently we've spun off our construction division into its own construction entity, CG Construction Group. And we also have an affiliate company that we cross-own with, that's a real estate advisory firm that does like asset management and sourcing debt. So we've really got 4 companies, but most of my time is spent on the capital group and the management company.
Yeah, really covering all the bases.
Yep.
And it's primarily residential, right? And
that's right. Yep. It's
okay.
all residential. We will consider some mixed use, but only if it's, call it 10 to 20% of the total project.
Yeah, when you said about warehouse retrofits, it's like turning warehouses into apartments or that kind of thing?
Or it's in our market, there's a lot of old buildings too. So sometimes it'll be, an old brewery, or it'll be an old, textile factory or something like that. So our partners that run the construction firm, one of them, which is my brother, and our new partner, Matt Crudo, they have extensive experience retrofitting those old buildings. So it's kind of a skill set that we've picked up in the last couple of years here.
Cool. Yeah. When you said that, I pictured some of those like old New York kind of buildings with turned into shishi apartments and things like that.
That's exactly correct. Yes. Yep.
Which I really like that style. Okay. So you have a lot of businesses all roll into one. So you kind of probably have it made as far as drumming up business. But what is your number one source for securing new development opportunities right now, and how has that changed over the past few years since you founded the company?
Yeah, right now, most of our deals are coming from broker relationships in the market. We also do some internal acquisitions work where we send out mailers, or we do outbound phone calls to owners directly. So actually the last project we just closed on, they're starting 2 weeks ago, we closed on the property, was from an internal source, but most of the things we're getting now are from brokers, and almost all of it is off market. Most of it is not listed. Most of the buildings, at least in our market, are trading before they even hit anything close to the MLS. So it's all just relationship driven. Sellers that are maybe interested in selling are just bringing it to brokers off market, and the brokers are only bringing it to people that they know can close.
Cool. Yeah. That's been sort of a running theme through all of them, has been relationships. It's all been like warm referrals from people that are known, that are past clients, or so that's the theme of the show.
Yeah, it's business, and especially real estate. It's so much of it is relationship driven. no matter if you're dealing with brokers or investors or municipalities, like everything is relationship based.
Can you walk us through your most successful strategy for attracting investors and stakeholders that doesn't involve paid advertising if you do any of that?
Yeah, we don't do any paid advertising, so this will be an easy one. The most of the time, I think almost without question, our entire investor base is either people that we have a relationship with already, friends, family, and acquaintances, both personal and professional, or they're referrals of those individuals. So it's like everyone is either within our sphere of influence or one step removed, and they have a warm lead coming in. I'm very hesitant to bring on people that we don't know entirely, only because, when you bring on investor capital, you're basically agreeing to partner with these people for 5 to 10 years or more in our case, because we like to hold things long term. So I don't want to get in a situation where we're working with investors that are not aligned with us, either from a core value perspective or investment duration or any of that stuff. So we're really tight on who we allow in, which allows us to enjoy working with the people that are investing with us. Now, on the downside, it may limit the amount we can raise initially. It's more of like an organic growth type strategy, but I'd much prefer doing that than just going out and throwing stuff on Instagram or Facebook or online with paid ads and just taking whoever has money.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's so your investors are primarily from the upstate New York area, or is it go kind of national?
No, it goes national. I mean, most of it's in the Northeast, though, but now they're sprinkled around the country too, because a lot of those relationships stem from either people we went to college with or people that used to live in the area and have moved away, or we have family that live all over the country too. So there's a good scattering of where they're coming from, but all of them know either myself or one of our partners fairly intimately. Either they're directly related to us or they've been friends for decades, or like I said, they were referred by somebody else, and we just created that relationship before they started investing.
6 degrees of separation kind of thing
Yeah,
of
yeah, yep.
bribery.
That's a good way to present it. Yes,
But all your projects or your properties are all in pretty much New York, right? Or are
yes,
they?
they all are.
Okay.
Yep, they're all within probably an hour of our office.
Okay.
One of our capacities is like the management company, right? So, if we can manage it ourselves, we can optimize it for returns. And then, if we can build it ourselves, we're going to optimize on that side through referrals and relationships with subcontractors. So we much prefer like the vertical integration type of strategy, even if it's within our separate entities. Because I think that we can maximize every investment with that strategy versus, bouncing around to all these different parts of the country or parts of the state where we don't have those kind of core capacities. I think as long as we stay in our lane here, there's plenty of opportunity in this MSA, and we can continue to capitalize on those advantages.
Okay. For those people that don't know the terminology, can you explain vertical integration a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, maybe the best way to put it is there's most developers are just putting the deal together. Like, so they'll go out and source the acquisition through like a broker relationship. They'll get municipal approvals, but then they'll go on and hire an outside construction firm to build the property. Then they'll hire a property management company to manage it thereafter. They're outsourcing the financing to a broker or to somebody else versus our model where either we are doing all those functions internally or our sister companies are doing those facilities for us instead, of which we have obviously direct relationships and control. So it's just a tighter funnel for the whole entire project. There's less variability, less risk, I would say, in things going sideways or type of cost overruns or anything like that, because literally we own the construction company. So
Yeah.
we try to lock in all those things on the front end. So there's rarely any big surprises, and we can kind of contain costs and maximize return for our investors the entire path from start to finish.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. Thanks for the
Yeah.
explanation. What is one common belief about real estate development that you found to be completely wrong?
Completely wrong. Well, I think if you ask somebody that was not in the business, they would probably underestimate how much of how much of a, like, I would say political, but it is political, how much of a political component goes into these things from like a municipal level, getting projects approved or getting zoning variances. if there's a difference between a project making sense on a spreadsheet and in concept, but you have all these other stakeholders that are involved, and they all have, sometimes aligned interest and sometimes competing interests, which change the direction of the project from what you envisioned before you went to them until what you completed afterwards. So I think most people would underappreciate how much of an influence and how long of a process it can be to kind of make sure that everyone else's priorities are also being recognized.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you have, talking about like the political side of it with the local municipalities, do you ever have issues with like historical building kind of, can't touch a facade, but you're doing like a retrofit inside? Does that come into it?
Sure do. So for one thing, a lot of our projects now, at least in recent years, have begun to capitalize on historic tax credits. So we're specifically targeting some of these older buildings because in the environment we've been in the last 2 or 3 years, where prices are so high and financing is difficult and expensive, we're trying to find every mechanism possible to make these deals pencil out, I guess for lack of a better term, to make sure that the returns are hitting our marks. So, we've kind of asked for some of this, but when you go down the historic route, you have one level that's like the local level. And that's like sometimes there's a historic zone. And yes, you can only use certain materials on the outside, and you have to go to like a specific design review board. And they're gonna have their say on, changing windows or changing materials on the building and all that stuff. And then you have the next level, which goes to the historic tax credit piece, which you have to get approval from the state and the federal government, and they have their own sets of criteria and rules and regulations. So you're basically doing this dance where you're making sure you fulfill all of the obligations that are required to hit all these benchmarks, while still making sure that the financing and the construction budget on your project are in line with what your assumptions were. So there's definitely a balancing act there that is a little bit complex.
And then do you have to avoid any kind of surprises coming up when you what was it called, break ground or start the project? Yeah, there's a lot of that in Astoria, Oregon. There's a lot of historic homes there, so that there's a little city council that has a tight grip on it.
Yes.
How do you structure your typical workday to maximize productivity while managing multiple construction projects and maintaining your work-life balance?
Yeah.
I'm assuming you have a work-life balance.
Yes, no, I very much do. Yep. So I'm very big on time blocking. So I have my kind of morning process where, I spend the first couple hours of the day not working. So most of it's like reading and then, just kind of starting my day, giving myself a little time to think. Then, I'll go out and I'm big into CrossFit. So I'll work out for an hour or two most every morning. And then generally I'm, setting aside specific time blocks during the day. So maybe 10 a.m. to noon is working on sales and acquisitions, and then I'll stop for lunch, walk the dogs, reset, come back and do something else from 1 to 3. Kids come home from school, then I'm doing something else from 3:30 to 5:30, and I'm kind of making sure that I'm prioritizing those time blocks so they're not just getting sucked into responding to emails all day or any of those types of things. So, I'm pretty protective over my time, but yeah, I mean, sometimes it just happens where somebody tries to pull you into a meeting and now your whole afternoon is shot, or something pops up on a job site and now I have to get on the call with the construction guys and see what's going on. So there's lots of different avenues throughout the day that kind of pull at you. But like for me, I try to keep the essentials of like my time blocks and my morning routine locked in no matter what.
How big is your? I know it's probably hard to say or give an answer to this because you have the different kind of companies within your group. And is you and your brother, and is how big is your team where you are primarily working?
So if you just narrow it down to Green Springs Capital Group and the management company, we probably have somewhere around 15 team members. And then the construction company is managed by our partner and my brother. So I'm only really advisory when it comes to them. But of course, we're hiring them to do all of our renovation work. So that's, I'm kind of in constant kind of communication with those guys as well. So they have their own team. And then the financial advisory firm has their own team too. So for me, though, it's somewhere between 10 and 15, depending on how you want to count it. Most of those are it's about half employees, half 1099 contractors.
What has been your most effective strategy for standing out in a competitive development market?
I think it just goes back to being open to every facet of the business that will kind of allow you to do more and more deals. So, we're not scared of, like we talked about already, historic properties. We're not scared of, major renovation projects, even if it's in like a 1960s or 70s era, apartment building. So we have the capacity from a construction perspective to tackle difficult jobs. We can do ground up construction. Some of the smaller buildings, we have short-term rentals, like I have a whole portfolio of short-term rentals that we manage as well. So I think when you combine all of these different tools that we have in our toolbox, I think it allows us to tackle more and more projects that other people might run. They might underwrite, in a plain and simple way and not see the value that is available there. We're working on two different projects right now. Both of them are historic tax credit eligible. Most people would overlook that or wouldn't know how to handle that animal. And then, a couple of these would have, ability to get like local tax pilots or state grants. So you got to kind of piece all these things together to make it work in some cases. And I think that is something that separates us from a lot of the other developers that just do ground up or just do, stable properties or they don't do historic stuff, so like the idea that we can do so many different things allows us to look at lots of different opportunities.
Because you have all these things that are basically in-house that you're keeping it like a one-stop shop almost with.
That's right. And in our varied experience among our ownership team and, the reach that everyone has within their network, everyone knows somebody that has done this kind of project before, and we can just consult with them or they're already on our team. So it gives us just that added capacity.
So to your background a bit, can you share a major mistake you made early in your development career and what you learned from it?
Well, I don't know if it was a major mistake, but it definitely slowed the growth of our company. Trying to do too much myself versus, expanding our team. When we first started, maybe for the first, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, I was doing pretty much 95% of the work myself. But in saying that, we were contained to a much, smaller portfolio, a much smaller footprint. We could only do certain projects. And then, my brother came on and partnered with me. And then in the last 2 years, we brought on two new partners that have a financial background and a construction background. So I think had we made that decision to pivot earlier and start bringing on more capacity from a leadership perspective instead of myself and my brother trying to do everything ourselves, I think our growth trajectory would have been accelerated significantly. But I think on the other side of things, trying to do everything ourselves allowed us kind of I guess it gave us the environment where we were able to learn intimately every part of the business because we were forced to do it ourselves. So I guess there's good and bad with that, but definitely should have brought on and created a stronger team sooner, I think, and we would have been that much further along.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I think I'm the same way where I like to learn it intimately and be able to know all the parts. And then I always then I have a hard time relinquishing the things to other people. So
Yeah, yeah.
how do you build and maintain relationships with contractors, investors, and municipal authorities to ensure smooth project execution and future opportunities? So you're not burning bridges.
Yeah, I think, especially in real estate, I mean, I'm sure it's like this in every field in business, but your reputation in the market that you're working in is like the most valuable thing you could possibly hang on to and preserve. So for us, I try to be as honest as possible and direct as possible with everyone that we're dealing with. So if we say we're going to do something, we do it. If we promise something, we fulfill it. We don't deceive anybody. We don't lie to anybody. We're pretty straightforward with, what our business plan is and what we're trying to accomplish. And I think, sometimes my delivery lacks a little bit of, we'll call it softness. But I think that the recipient, whether it's the city or an investor or a contractor, I think they respect the fact that I'm giving them my unfiltered opinion. Like I'm telling you exactly what I think. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it and I'm not deceiving you in any way. And I think people respond to that positively most of the time. And I guess then the evidence is in the result, right? So if we're able to perform, we're able to close on properties, we're able to do difficult ground up projects, difficult historic projects, everyone in our, kind of our sphere, whether they're consultants or employees or government officials or investors, they all see that production and they can say, all right, well, yep, he said he was going to do this. And the team just went and did it. Like, so, it might not be perfect every time, but, 9 times out of 10, we're executing to the way we said we're going to.
Word is your bond.
Yeah. I mean, for lack of a better term, yeah. People I mean, big part of when people want to do business with you is, can they trust you, right?
Hmm.
If they don't trust you, nobody's ever going to do business with you.
Yeah, 100%. What is one construction management or project planning system in your business that you couldn't live without, and why?
I don't have anything that's specific to construction. Again, I've trying to outsource that as much as possible to my partner and my brother. But internally, I know that our companies all run on EOS. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but it's Entrepreneurial Operating System, which is basically like an it's an operating system for a business, right? So it gives you like a cadence to your meetings, set agendas for your meetings. Kind of has like a KPI scorecard for everyone in the department, so everyone kind of owns certain metrics that they're measured to and they're held to. So it's there's a book, Traction, that's written by Gino Wickman, that kind of explains the process. But we operate all of our companies on that system, and I don't think we would be able to survive without it, because it kind of keeps us aligned and keeps us on the path to where we're trying to get to, from a vision perspective. So I think that's essential to our success.
Uh, how do you handle challenging market conditions like material cost increases or labor shortages when you're managing the timelines and budgets?
Well, up until a year ago, before we spun off the construction company, not very well. So we used to have construction in house, and when we had it in house, you start getting in that field where it's like it's hard to separate, the owner's perspective from like what we should be doing from a construction perspective. So they all kind of get pushed together, and then it just becomes this like blob. And we experienced some cost overruns in some of our projects, but now that we've outsourced it, we basically operate as if we're two different companies. So when we start a project, for instance, right now on the one we bought 2 weeks ago, right now the construction company and myself and our team are getting together to make sure the scope of work is exactly correct. The budget is in line. And then when they start swinging hammers, we have a fixed budget for the entirety of the project. If we change something or something unexpected pops up. So we try to do as much due diligence on the front end, both the construction company and us, to make sure that those surprises don't happen, or they aren't so big where it blows the project up. So we do a lot of research on the front end, a lot of inspections, and then we just communicate back and forth to make sure that everyone is in agreement of what the project's going to entail. So that, for the most part, maintains us on budget and on time. We do still go into it though, obviously with a little bit of a buffer in the project budget. And then mentally, I guess, if they tell me it's going to take 9 months, I'm just assuming in my mind it's 12. So I think we have realistic expectations when it comes to timing, because we don't really control everything. Sometimes we have tenants that are living in the building, and we have to kind of manage those relationships at the same time. Maybe we have, city inspections or something that we also have to deal with. So there's a lot of moving parts. So I think the moral of the story is just make sure everything's detailed in writing going into it. And then just be open to the idea that your exact perfect timeline is probably not going to be fulfilled if it date, but like just build in that buffer on the budget, whether it's 5 or 10% extra. And then from a time perspective, whether it's 3 or 4 months extra. And then in the end, you'll have a fantastic project.
How long does it take from securing a contract to start a project to like actually beginning construction? Is that
Yeah,
like
that's
the
going to
one you're
depend on.
working on now, for example, is that you just signed?
It's all based on the municipality, right? Some municipalities we can walk into and give them our building permit, and you'll walk out with the permit the same day. So other municipalities you'll submit, and it'll take them 90 or 120 days to approve your permit. But we know I mean, it's our market, right? So we know which municipalities are going to be like that and take that long. So in those municipalities, we always just build that into the front end of the construction, right? So we tell the lender, hey, it's going to take us 90 or 120 days just to get the permit. We need to build that into the loan. So instead of you expecting us to be done in 15 months, we probably should write down that it's going to be 18 or 20. And then, everyone just kind of operates with the knowledge that it's going to take longer than you want it to.
Under promise and over deliver kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly correct.
So our last question is: what is one skill you think most real estate developers overlook, but is crucial for long-term success?
I might say persistence. There's never been a project that I've entered into that went exactly as planned. And even from the approval process, you take it back a step further, even just getting it under contract, like you have to be extremely like resilient and to some extent flexible. Because, for example, from the time a broker brings me a project, right, we're going to underwrite it. And then there's a whole negotiation period with the owner, right? Back and forth on the contract. And there's, they have things that they need to stick to. We have, obviously our things that we're looking for. So we have to try to first, you got to marry that together. Then you get under contract and you have all kinds of inspections. And now things occur that you weren't planning for, whether it's environmental or structural or whatever, you got to solve for that. You also have to, secure financing, and the lender maybe is only going to give you 65% LTV instead of the 75 you were planning for. So now you have to solve for that. And then you have to go out and raise capital. And it's, sometimes it's more difficult than others, or, there's every step of the way, there's like a multitude of problems or that require a solution in order to advance the project from start to finish. And that could extend over the course of like 2 or 3 years. So just constantly solving problems and being resilient. And I think that if you're not persistent, more times than not, you would just quit, right? Why would you do that? Why am I putting myself through this for 2 years? But if you enjoy the process and you enjoy the product and you know that the rewards at the end of the rainbow are going to be worth it, then you kind of just put your head down. Every day is a day. Let's just keep moving the ball forward. And with that persistence is how you kind of get the project finished.
Sage advice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Brian, for taking the time today to come on to this podcast, and really appreciate it. And I think I really enjoyed the conversation as well. So I'm sure others will too.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. And if anyone wants to check out any of our most recent projects, our web address is greenspringscapitalgroup.com. And then our property management company, which will have pictures of most of the buildings, is saratogastays.com.
Okay. And I will put all that in the show notes as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you. That wraps up the second episode of Thank You for Your Reply. A big thank you to Brian Green for sharing your valuable insights with our community. To our listeners, you can find show notes and links below this video, or if you're on audio, check out the show description. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe so you'll be able to catch the new episodes when they drop. Until next time, keep innovating, keep growing, and remember, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your system.